Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 357 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. I have been doing a divisional breakdown, of course, all the divisions before the NFL season starts. The official regular season starts in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I just got finished with the NFC. Every episode, the last 4 episodes, obviously, I devoted one episode to a division. And now I'm going to move over to the AFC. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you guys. We're going to talk about the AFC South today. And I don't like talking about the AFC South. There's a lot of intrigue with the AFC South, but it's not really because of the teams. It's more about players. I don't see much success from the. We'll talk about it, but this is honestly I honestly think that the AFC South is one of the weakest divisions in football. Again, there are some players that we'll talk about and reasons why I feel this way, but I'm just not jumping for joy about the AFC South. I know that kind of like it's hard to keep people after you have expressed your lack of care about a division. So just hear me out, man. I'm gonna put if this is one of your favorite teams or you want to hear what I have to say, I'm gonna put the timestamps in the description so you can jump ahead. But I'm just let you know now, the AFC South, not one of my favorite divisions. And let me start with one of the reasons why it's not my favorite division. And let's start with the Jaguars. In my opinion, the Jaguars are probably the best team in this division. You have a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence that a lot of people think is transcendent and has shown flashes of being that next quarterback. I know there's a lot of people that are very high on Trevor Lawrence. I'm high on Trevor Lawrence. And there are some solid pieces on this Jaguars team, right? But honestly, it starts and finishes with Trevor Lawrence. And that's kind of the storyline. That's kind of the theme of the AFC South. It starts and finishes with a player. Now, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence for a second. When we talk about the upper echelon of quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence has shown flashes that he belongs in that Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. He belongs in that conversation. In fact, let me rephrase, or let me back up. Patrick Mahomes is the clear-cut best quarterback in the league. So he's in a class of his own. I'm talking about the tier under him. You know, the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, Justin Herberts. Trevor Lawrence has shown that he is good enough to be in that class. He's also shown that there are times when he doesn't look poised. And he's had, I mean, let's talk about the last game we saw. Well, the second to last game we saw him in, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, comeback in NFL playoff history. That is the Jaguars against the Chargers. One of the reasons, outside of course, the deficit, one of the biggest reasons why I think, and why it's being said that comeback was probably one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history, was because of just the night and day play of Trevor Lawrence from the first half to the second half. The first half, I think he had like 4 interceptions or something like that, and he looked abysmal. He looked awful, and it was starting to creep in that there was a sense that Trevor Lawrence is good, and he has flashes of greatness. However, yes, it was his first playoff game. But as we've seen with Trevor Lawrence throughout his young career, he has those moments in big games and big moments against good teams where he'll have a high interception game, or he'll look like the inferior quarterback. Now, mind you, Trevor Lawrence was projected to be like the next coming out of Clemson, and rightfully so. He had an incredible. He was one of the better college players, especially in Clemson. Won them a national championship. I think went to another one. But one of the biggest reasons why I said that was, again, one of the biggest and greatest comebacks in NFL history, because I've never seen a player just throw out a half and come back look like a completely different player. I've never seen that, except for that game. Usually when you throw 4 interceptions or you're down, I think it was like 27-0 or 21-3 or something like that. Usually you pack it in. Usually, I understand it's the playoffs, but hey, man, it's not our night. It's not our night. It's not our day. We live to fight another day. It's very hard to muster up not only the ability, but the confidence to say, hey, we're down 27-0. We're down 24-0. We can still come back. And again, I don't know what was said in the locker room. I don't know, but Doug McDermott had them ready to play, and they came back and beat the Chargers. Now, they ultimately lost to the Chiefs again the next game, but this Jaguars team is a young team, and that's actually the theme of the AFC South. The AFC South is a very young. It has very young teams, and I don't outside of Trevor Lawrence, there's not a quarterback in this division that I trust, at least right now. We're going to talk about Anthony Richardson. We're going to talk about C.J. Stroud. The only quarterback in this division that I trust right now. And honestly, I don't know if I trust Trevor Lawrence or not. Because, again, I've seen greatness from Trevor Lawrence, then I've seen him look god-awful. But when you look at this roster, you have Travis Etienne. You hope that he's able to stay healthy. You have DeEverest Johnson. He was really good at the running back position. You have Zay Jones. You have Christian Kirk. And, of course, we know about the drastic overpay from him. But he did produce last year. This team has pieces. But I don't expect this team to be – let me say this. I don't expect Trevor Lawrence to be – I expect him to be amongst the best quarterbacks in the league. I have seen enough to think that Trevor Lawrence is good enough to do that. And when we talk about the totality of the AFC South, I don't think that there's another team that – I think that the Jaguars should finish number one, should finish atop the AFC South, because I think – it's not really I think, it's kind of I know. They have the best quarterback in the division. And depending on who you are, depending on what games you want to dissect and look at, depending on how you truly feel about comebacks, how you feel about Trevor Lawrence, some people have him as a top 5 quarterback. Some people have him top 10. I'll probably have him in the top 10 range. It's I need to see consistency. I need to see I need to see your ability to maintain greatness and not have games where he's a better, in my opinion, he's a better version of Dak Prescott. And what do I mean by that? We've seen games where Dak Prescott looks like a top 10, top 5 quarterback. And a lot of people say that is the real Dak Prescott. However, we've also seen games where Dak Prescott has thrown multiple interceptions and probably been the worst player on the field for his team. And this is with a good offensive line. This is with a good defense, and that is Dak Prescott. The Jaguars, they don't have the greatest offensive line, don't get me wrong. But again, they have pieces. On the defensive side, they have pieces. They have Trayvon Walker. He was a top draft pick a couple years ago. They have pieces, man. Darryl Thomas, Willie Taylor III, Leonard Taylor. They have good pieces. Evan Ingram, who hasn't really been able to find a place, even though he had a really good year last year for the Jaguars. This team is okay. I'll say it. This team, in my opinion, is okay. There's no name that jumps out at me and thinks that this team is a title contender, or this team is a top of the AFC contender. But what I will say is they have number 16. They have Trevor Lawrence. And because they have Trevor Lawrence, I think Trevor Lawrence is the best, not only the best quarterback in this division, but arguably the best player in this division. And when you pair that alongside with, like I said, a Christian Kirk, with a Zay Jones, with Evan Ingram, then you start to you might have something. And again, I to me would be shocked if this team is not good enough to win the division because of Trevor Lawrence. Now, if they don't win the division, that's because either Trevor Lawrence just was injured, or which I don't wish injury upon anybody, or just or Trevor Lawrence may not be the guy that we think he is, or his inconsistency may be more of just who he is compared to what he could be. So the roster's okay. I just need to. I don't because they have Trevor Lawrence. I think that they're going to be the best. They're going to be the best team in the AFC South, and depending on how good Trevor Lawrence is, will ultimately determine how good this Jaguars team is in comparison to the entire AFC. So, we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, we're going to go to the Colts. And the Colts, to me, find themselves tussling and having a tug of war with themselves. Because you have a lot of the old regime. You have a lot of older players, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You have a lot of older players that their time is, I'm not going to say is coming to an end, but they don't have much time to wait for development. I mean, you have DeForest Buckner, who is considered one of the best defensive tackles in football. You have Quentin Nelson on the offensive line. You have players, Zaire Franklin. However, you have Anthony Richardson. Now, the conversation around Anthony Richardson, especially this week, has been, is he ready to start? Is he the quarterback? Let me say this. There's no debate that the Colts believe that Anthony Richardson is the quarterback of the future. There's no debate about that. We're not even arguing that. They drafted him very high for a reason. You don't draft someone as high as they drafted him and think that he is not going to be there in a couple years. Anthony Richardson is the quarterback of the future for the Colts. But that's not that's not the conversation at hand. You still have Sam Ehlinger, you still have Gardner Minshew. Now, no. Sam Ehlinger, Gardner Minshew, they're not Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. They're actually not even really starting quarterbacks. But it goes back to the timeline. Do you wait and do you allow him to grow? But on top of that, they're in a win-lose situation, or they're in a win-win-lose-lose situation. And let me explain it. I don't think there's anybody that thinks that this team, and that is the Colts, are good enough to compete for a championship, are good enough to compete in the AFC in general right now. When we talk about some of the top teams, I don't consider the Colts a top team. I don't consider really any team in the AFC South outside of possibly the Jaguars a top team in the AFC. However, like I said, you have good players. You have Zach Moss. You have Kenyon Drake. You have good players. So, you have Michael Pittman. You have Amari Rodgers that they got from Packers, I believe. The question is, here's my theory. My theory on quarterbacks is, you ever been swimming? And when you're swimming, there are some parents, there are some swim instructors that literally tell you to just throw you in the deep end and say, learn how to swim. Now, that's probably not the safest thing, and I wouldn't wish that upon it. That happened to me. I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but I was one of those kids that was thrown into the pool, thrown into the deep end. I think my dad did it, and just said, hey, you got to survive. So, some people, most people, the whole survival instincts kick in, and they either float, tread water, swim, you know what I'm saying? But for a lot of people, that doesn't happen until you throw them in the deep end. Again, I wouldn't recommend that for people, especially these days. I wouldn't recommend that. But the concept is, you're really unable to learn. You're really unable to develop until you get put in a situation that you need to develop. There's a lot of people that aren't unable to really understand or really develop in practice. For instance, I'll talk about myself again. I played college basketball. I played basketball pretty much my whole life, but I played college basketball. And in sports, you hear the term, there are game players and there are practice players. So what does that mean? That means that there are some players that it's very hard for them to get up for practice. It's very hard for them to give it their all in practice. Now, yes, practice is important, but some of those players, it's just hard for them to mentally get themselves ready, mentally get themselves amped for practice, because in their eyes, it's just practice. Now, those same players, not all of them, of course, but there are players, those same players that are some of the best in-game players that we have. I know one of my teammates, rest in peace, Gerard, one of the team leaders, he was not a practice player at all. Even though, yes, he brought a fire to him and he brought a fire to the team. He was very competitive, but there was a drastic difference between how he played in practice and how he played in the game. I was like that too. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I was the best player on my team. I really wasn't. But I was drastically better in the game than I was in practice. Practice, I was so mechanical and I was so I didn't want to mess up. So in my mind, I was just trying to run everything and execute everything to a T. In the game, I was more free flowing and letting the defense dictate, what happens and letting the defense dictate what I do. So I say all that to say this. I feel like I went in such a wide circle to get here. If you're the Colts and you're Anthony Richardson, I understand the dilemma that you have. Do you throw him in? Because there's a lot of people. Most of the reports coming out of camp are saying that Anthony Richardson is a great talent and has the opportunity to be one of the more skilled quarterbacks in the league. However, there's almost every reporter saying that he is physically not, or he's not ready. He's a raw talent, but he's just not ready. Even if you look at the preseason game he was in, he looked good, but he made raw mistakes. So, do you throw him in, or throw him in the deep end essentially and have him start? Which I know reports come out and said that he's pretty much starting, but that could be a detriment to the team, the current team, because again, you have players that this team, the only position that is not in win now mode for the Colts is their quarterback. Everyone else is in win now mode. They have Bashad Perriman. Daniel Ogletree. Every position for the Colts is in win now mode except for the quarterback. And that is the struggle that the Colts are struggling, or not struggle. Those are the questions that the Colts have to answer. What's more important, the development of their quarterback or trying to milk the most out of this team? The question is, however, what is the ceiling for this team? Because we've seen this team with multiple different quarterbacks, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. And while no, I don't think that those quarterbacks, especially at the time in which that they were the quarterback for the Colts, I don't think that they're gangbusters. I don't think that those quarterbacks are making much noise. But like, what is the ceiling for this team? I think that there's going to be a lot of finding out. We're going to find out a lot about this team. We're going to find out a lot about their starting quarterback. Again, there was a lot of people that were. It was head scratching to a lot of people with seeing how high in the draft Anthony Richardson went, and I understand, especially when you see what he did at Florida, and like I said, he is a raw talent. And again, this team is in win now mode outside of their quarterback. I think that's the best way to describe the Indianapolis Colts. This team is in win now mode. However, when you have Shaq Leonard, when you have Zaire Franklin, when you have Quentin Nelson, when you have some of these players, it's like, do you sacrifice maybe a year or two to get your quarterback right, or do you go for it now? Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Al Quindon Muhammad. These are all players that are good enough to win now. So, then again, and I guess when you think about it, it's not like you have a gangbuster, or it's not like you're benching, or you're arguably how do I say this, man? It is kind of an easier, now that you're really sitting here talking about it and talking through it, it is easier to start an Anthony Richardson, even though he is a raw talent and may not be physically or ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But it's not like you have, Patrick Mahomes sitting on the bench. It's not like you have Josh Allen sitting on the bench. You have Gardner Minshew. And no disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but he has shown that he is pretty much a bona fide backup. So I don't have much. And this goes to the AFC South in general. I don't have much faith in this team. I think that the storyline for this team, the storyline for the Colts is simple. How good will Anthony Richardson be, and can he be in year one? I think that you're going to see a tip-top shape Anthony Richardson, and not saying physical shape, but you're going to see the growth, the maturation of Anthony Richardson in years to come. This year, however, I think you're going to have raw, incredible plays. Like, you're going to look and say, how did he do that? I know there's a clip circulating in the internet right now with he did a jump pass that looked like it went 70 yards or something. So he is a raw talent. It's just, is he going to be able to put the pieces together to become a solid quarterback? And that honestly is the outside of one team, that's honestly the story, the theme of the AFC South. Can their quarterback put it together? And if they do put it together, how good will that team look? One of the biggest reasons why I have the Jaguars as the number one team in this division is because we've seen their quarterback put it together. The three other quarterbacks we really haven't outside of one, but we'll talk about them shortly. The other team that is going to roll out a rookie quarterback in week 1 is the Texans. The Texans have a lot of new. The Texans is just the whole team is pretty much a new car smell. You have a new head coach in DeMeco Ryans. You have a new starting quarterback in C.J. Stroud. You have a new defensive end in Will Anderson. It's just a lot of new. And this, I'm looking over this roster. Yes, you have Shaquille Griffin. Yes, you have Nico Collins. But this isn't that good of a roster, to be completely honest with you. It has pieces, don't get me wrong, man. And it has good names, like it has, and we're going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins in a second. But actually, and then we're going to talk about him for the Titans, but it has Noah Brown. It has Damian Pierce is probably their best player outside of the defense. Like I said, man, the Houston Texans is the new coat of paint team, is the new car. However, it's the new car from CarMax. Now, I know CarMax sells mostly used cars. This is what I mean by that. Nothing is a sure thing. Nothing is a bona fide thing in football, right? Patrick Mahomes wasn't nobody thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be this coming out of Texas Tech. If that was the case, he probably would have went number 1. Nobody thought Lamar Jackson would be as good as he was. If that was the case, he probably wouldn't win at the end of the first round. C.J. Stroud, you can argue, was the most talented quarterback in this year's draft. Of course, the 4 names that we pretty much heard throughout the draft going into the draft was Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Those were the 4 quarterbacks that we didn't know or we thought were the most talented and most NFL-ready quarterbacks. Now, we just talked about Anthony Richardson, and while he may not be the most NFL-ready day one quarterback, it was pretty much known that he's the most freak athlete of the quarterbacks. When we were talking about which quarterback is the most ready day one, the conversation was between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Now we know that Bryce Young went number 1 to the Panthers. Because you don't know how good CJ Stroud is going to be, it's very hard for me to put any predictions on this team. I do understand that this team hasn't been good for a while. Even at its height, even with J.J. Watt, even with Deshaun Watson, even with DeAndre Hopkins, this team was never one of those teams that was good enough to compete for a Super Bowl. And those days are long gone. Now there can be new hope, but it's tough. Again, the AFC South has a tough schedule as well. I mean, week 1, you're at Baltimore. Baltimore just got Jadeveon Clowney. You have to go to the Colts, good defense. You have to play the Patriots, good defense. You have to play the Saints, good defense. You have to play the Panthers, good defense. The Buccaneers, okay defense. The Broncos, we think is going to be a good defense. The Jets, good defense. Titans, good defense. Browns, good defense. Like they have that. That's the thing. And I talked about this when we talked about the NFC South. The NFC South has one of the easier schedules in football. When you have younger quarterbacks, an easier schedule is definitely what you want, especially to ease them in. It's very tough. The AFC South, while they're often they don't have to play in too tough. I mean, that's a lie because they have to go against the Ravens offense. I think they're going to be a lot better with, a healthy Lamar Jackson and Odell Beckham Jr. It's just tough. It's gonna be tough for the Titans, and I think the Titans are probably gonna finish one of the worst records because this isn't that good of a team. Again, you have good pieces, you have good names, but as far as a team, you don't know. You have, again, the 3 best players that right now that we think are going to be the best players is C.J. Stroud, Dameon Pierce, and Will Anderson. They do have Stingley, right? Yeah, they have Derek Stingley, who was really good out of LSU. This would be his second year. That pieces. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is the NFL, man. This is professional sports. It's not like these players or these teams have nobody. It's not like these people suck. You're of course comparing them to the rest of the league. And yes, Derek Stingley is good. Will Anderson, we don't know yet, but we're projecting him to be pretty good. But outside of that, it's tough to, especially in the AFC. That's another thing that I didn't really talk about when we talked about the Jaguars and the Colts. The NFC is so much weaker, or is weaker than the NFC. Or let me see. The NFC is weaker than the AFC. Like that, there's no metric that you can show me to prove me wrong. Yes, you have the Eagles, good team. The 49ers, good team. Cowboys, we'll see, but good roster. Any given on the AFC and any given day or any given Sunday, you're playing a top tier team. Again, the Ravens, week 1, they made the playoffs last year without Lamar Jackson. The Colts, you have DeForest Buckner, you have Zaire Franklin, you have a good defense. The Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. The Pittsburgh Steelers, you know about their defense. They also have Minka Fitzpatrick. They have They have T.J. Watt. The Falcons, they have, well, maybe as a team they're not the best, but you still have Ritter. You have Bijan Robinson. You have Kyle Pitts. The Saints, we know Derek Carr, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara is going to be back. Like Cincinnati Bengals, we know about them. What I'm saying is, and actually, let me just Ravens, Colts, Jaguars, Steelers, Bengals, Broncos, Jets, Titans, Browns. Like this is not the division that you can. There isn't really any layups. The layup. The only layup I really see is either it's pretty much week 11. That's the Cardinals. And when you have a rookie quarterback, when you have a young quarterback, you want as many layups as possible, and you only have one. Because again, you can argue week 8 with the Carolina Panthers, but their team in general is good. So I'm not here saying that they're going to be trash. Don't get me wrong. But I do think that they're going to be one of the lesser teams in the NFL, and that is the Houston Texans. I think that C.J. Stroud's going to be good. I think that Anthony Richardson, they're going to be good as far as with years to come. I don't think that, and it's very unrealistic to expect a rookie quarterback to just be, especially in the AFC, to be a game changer year one. Because the AFC is not a division to play with. I trust and believe. So, and again, I do see this Texans teams, this Houston Texans team, has cornerstones. They have players that you can see are the building blocks to a very positive future. Like I said, Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, Damian Pierce, of course, C.J. Stroud. Like they have players that you can see, you can call or say are building blocks for a very productive future. But I don't know how that really what that really means for the present. Nico Collins could be good, but again, for the present, I don't know. Oh, and shouts out to John Michie. I know he was suffering or going through a lot of health stuff, and now he's cleared to play again. Shouts out to you, brother. I'm happy to see him on the field. So, but yeah, I don't have much faith in this Texans team. I think it's a toss up between, just because of how young their starting quarterback is. I think that they're going to be in the running for the worst team in the division. They have a lot of young players, and they have a lot. It's either going to be them or the Colts as the worst team in the division. But we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, this is gonna sound like a rant. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it is. We're gonna move over to the Titans. And let me explain to you why I absolutely hate talking about the Titans. One thing, I've talked about this on this podcast several times, especially when we talk about basketball. But the last place you want to be in sports is middle of the pack. And For people that don't know, I have to explain it every single time, which is okay. Middle of the pack is you're not good enough to compete for a championship. But you're not bad enough to have a high draft pick unless you make a trade or something. The biggest reason why I hate talking about, hate is a strong word. One of the biggest reasons why I don't like talking about the Titans is because the narrative for the Titans remains the same every single year. And for people that don't know, in fact, let me pull something up real quick. I'm pulling up because of course I do this every year, a divisional breakdown. Let me read to you what I said last year, or what I wrote down last year, and you ask yourself, have you heard this before? The Tennessee Titans. Good team, not great. Good defense. Great coach, Mike Vrabel. Biggest question marks, the quarterback position and every other position outside of running back. The team is led by their running back. However, because their quarterback play is so shaky, I can't see them making much noise in the playoffs. Defense is good. However, their secondary leaves a lot to be desired. Offensive line is okay. However, I don't know if Derrick Henry being good elevates their offensive line or highs their offensive line. Ryan Tannehill is not the quarterback of the future. And honestly, I don't know if he's the quarterback of the present. This team is a middle of the pack team. Really could be really good, but could be really bad. Not good enough to win a Super Bowl, but not bad enough to have a top pick in the draft. I wrote this last year. Let me ask you, what has changed? The defense is good. However, what is the weak point of the defense? The secondary. Their offensive line is okay. But is their offensive line really, something to go home and write about? You get DeAndre Hopkins and pair him alongside Treylon Brooks. And on paper, that could be one of the better wide receiver duos in football. However, the big problem with that is the quarterback position, because you have three quarterbacks, none of which you are confident in can maximize your wide receiver core. In Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill, and Malik Willis. Now, Ryan Tannehill being in the league for 12 years, we feel like we've seen the best of Ryan Tannehill. That was probably a couple years ago when they went to the playoffs, beat the Ravens, and got smacked the week before or the week after. They also, the next year, played the Ravens and lost. And if I'm not mistaken, they were at home. Their best player is Derrick Henry. However, and this is the conversation that we've had majority of this offseason because of the whole wide receiver running back push and them wanting more money. How valuable really is a running back when the top running backs in the league hasn't even competed or been close to competing for a Super Bowl? Derrick Henry has been the Titans' best player pretty much since he's gotten there. And in 8 years, he has not, I don't think, in 8 years, he hasn't even played in a conference championship. We know that this team is going to be tough, is going to be rugged because of their head coach, Mike Vrabel. You usually, you adopt the identity of your coach, usually, in football. And Mike Vrabel is a great coach, in my opinion. But there's nothing about that. That's, again, the same. Yeah, you have Jeffrey Simmons. Cool. That's about it. Man. You have Amari Hooker. But let me say this. And I don't know what can change. Because, again, this has been a perpetual cycle with the Titans. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be maybe a couple weeks, maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4. They might go on a 4-game win streak. But then again, hold on. Yeah. So possibly from week 8 to week, let's say 13. I think they have a great shot. I think that they can beat the Falcons. I think they can beat the Steelers. I think they can beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they can beat the Jaguars. I think they can beat the Panthers. I think they can beat the Colts. But outside of that, and I'm like, it might not even matter because they got to start at the Saints, then the Chargers, then the Browns, then the Bengals, like, then the Colts, then the Ravens. This is a middle of the pack team, man. And what's unfortunate about it is they have 3 quarterback options that you don't trust right now, and honestly, one of which is probably gone by the middle of the year, and that's Ryan Tannehill. And that's another thing. I think, even though you never want to trade your best player, right? You never want to trade your top asset. However, again, I think that this team has been due for a rebuild. Because I think that this team is peaked. Even with Will Levis coming in, even with Malik Willis, this team is peaked. And at this point, why not trade a Derrick Henry? Why not trade a Ryan Tannehill to see what you can get? Because what about this team is making you think, oh yeah, we got a shot. Oh, I'll speak on DeAndre Hopkins and how DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm not mad at him. DeAndre Hopkins made a legit money decision. DeAndre Hopkins, at his height, has been one of the best wide receivers in the league. Now, he did suffer some injuries in Arizona, and of course that he just when he wasn't playing, the team just wasn't good. And we know about the multiple 1,000-yard seasons, damn near every season he's played except maybe one or two in his career. Even with the Houston Texans. And you had a lot of teams like the Bills or the Chiefs or the Ravens that were clamoring for his services. And he ended up going to the Titans. Now, yes, there is a benefit to be had having a number one wide receiver on your team. And there is a direct correlation to how good your quarterback plays compared to, or in correlation to having a number one wide receiver. For instance, we saw the incredible increase that Josh Allen made playing alongside Stephon Diggs. We've seen the incredible increase that Patrick Mahomes had playing with Tyreek Hill. We saw how good Joe Burrow is playing alongside a Jamar Chase. We see Kirk Cousins, how much he's increased playing alongside Justin Jefferson. So I do think that there is benefit with having a DeAndre Hopkins on the Titans for their quarterback, whoever is going to be starting week one, which is looking more like it's going to be Ryan Tannehill. But let me remind you, Ryan Tannehill has been in the league for 10 years now. How long has Ryan Tannehill been in this league? Ryan Tannehill has been in the league for 12 years. I'm sorry. And kind of like the whole Russell Westbrook thing that I talk about. When you've been in the league for as long as Ryan Tannehill's been in the league, you kind of are stuck in your ways. So I don't think that having a number one wide receiver is really going to shake up the room for this team. And you know it's bad when you have a Malik Willis, who I think just 2 years ago you drafted him, and Will Levis, and neither one of them are starting. That means you have no faith in either one of them. We've seen Malik Willis. Malik Willis did not look good. He had like flashes, not saying entire game, like maybe a couple throws, but he doesn't look ready, and obviously Will Levis ain't doing nothing since he's not playing. Or he's not starting, from what it seems like. I think that, again, DeAndre Hopkins picked the money over winning a championship, which nothing wrong with that. It's all about priorities. What are your priorities? Because this team is nowhere close to winning a championship, in my opinion. Like, at all. It's going to be a long season for this team, in my opinion. And outside of, to me, like I said, this is going to be a season of discovery for the AFC South. How good is Trevor Lawrence one of those quarterbacks that you can argue is a top 5 quarterback? Or is his inconsistencies going to hold him back? Or is his inconsistencies going to be the story of his career? Or at least the story of this season? Which quarterback is going to emerge more ready to lead their franchise in a different direction? Is it going to be C.J. Stroud? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? And is this the year that we finally see change? And when I mean change, I don't think that this roster as constructed is good. But is this the year that we're going to see change for the Titans? Meaning, is Derrick Henry going to get traded? Is Ryan Tannehill going to get traded? There's a lot of influx. And there's a lot of movement that I believe we're going to see in the AFC South. We'll just have to see. So let's move forward. I'm not going to stay at this long because it's not, NFL season's about to start, but football and basketball usually dominate off seasons. I think that both the NFL and the NBA are kings when it comes to dominating an off season. Again, the first game in the NBA, I think, is in October. Yet they just released a schedule a day or two ago, and it's interesting. It's always interesting to see how a team releases a schedule. It's a thing for both the NBA and NFL. I know the Brooklyn Nets kind of took the same book that the Titans did, I believe, and asked people on Coney Island that know nothing about sports, what's the team logo? It's something fun. I know the Chicago Bears. I know the Chicago Bulls. They did a Pokemon theme thing. It's interesting, man. It's very interesting, and it's always fun to see just how a team displays their schedule. Or reveals, let's say, their schedule, and it's interesting to see what the NBA values. You kind of know what they value, but the schedule is a tall tale sign of what they value. For instance, I think the Golden State Warriors have 41 games that's supposed to be on primetime TV, I think, or something like 15, maybe something like that. They have the most primetime games, or the most games that are of primetime. Meaning, the Golden State Warriors is a moneymaker for the NBA. They people want to come see Steph Curry. People want to come see the Golden State Warriors brand, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They want to see how this Chris Paul thing is going to work out. I think the team right under them is the Lakers. We all know how, it's the Lakers. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jordan. The Wizards have 4, I think, primetime games. I think 2 of them is going against Golden State because the storyline with Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. People want to see how good Victor Wembanyama is. Victor Wembanyama has and the Spurs, who finished with the worst record last year, they have primetime games because people want to see Victor Wembanyama. That's the schedule a lot really shows you how they feel about a team, what they think a team's gonna be. The Charlotte Hornets, I think they maybe have one, if that, primetime game. And the it tells you things. The schedule release tells you things that the NBA prepares themselves for things. Let's say that. For instance, one of a prime time marquee game is going to be the Portland Trail Blazers and the Miami Heat. However, that game is a couple days or a couple weeks after the trade deadline. I think a couple days after the trade deadline. Why is that happening? Because the NBA anticipates that Damian Lillard is going to be on the Miami Heat. So, of course, that's going to be a quote-unquote rivalry game or return home game. What I'm saying is, man, one of the biggest reasons why schedule release are so important to the NBA, NFL in general is because it shows you of course how your team's gonna or where your team's gonna play. The road trips, for instance, I think Golden State has 15 back-to-backs, which is the most in the NBA, I believe, and this is the second year in a row they're doing that. That usually means that a lot of those games are going to be on TV, and a lot of the veteran teams that are good, they usually put them on back-to-back because they understand the grind and stuff. But yeah, the schedule release is always exciting, and it's always a big spectacle with the NFL and NBA, because it definitely it shows you what matters. It shows you, of course, there's always and with the NBA tournament, the in-season tournament, that's going to add a new thing to it. I know the WNBA has been doing it with the Commissioner's Cup, and shouts out to them. Shouts out to the New York Liberty for winning it this year, I believe. But we'll see if it works in the NBA. You see about who's playing on Christmas, or, I think the first game of the season or the first night of the season is going to be the Lakers and the Nuggets, and of course that's the ring ceremony, and Golden State and the Phoenix Suns. Of course, you have Chris Paul playing his former team, the Phoenix Suns. You have Kevin Durant playing his former team, the Golden State Warriors. And it shows you what the NBA values, what the league values. In the NFL, do you know how I think the Jets have the most primetime games? The Jets, and that's because of the Aaron Rodgers effect. The Chiefs have a bunch of them. In basketball, the teams with the stars, the Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors, the Lakers, the Suns. People like seeing Steph Curry. People like seeing LeBron, Jokic, Kevin Durant. They like seeing these players, so they're going to put them on primetime. Luka has a bunch, I think. So, yeah, man, there's no point in staying on it long. That is the schedule released, a couple days ago, and we know exactly who's going to play what. Hopefully I'm able to get to a couple games. I went to I paid to go see Golden State in Brooklyn last year in Brooklyn. And I think 2 or 3 weeks before, Steph Curry goes out. So I remember watching that game. Kyrie Irving wasn't playing either. Kevin Durant was playing, thank God. And you had Jordan Poole playing. You had Draymond Green. You had Steph didn't play. Andre Iguodala didn't play. Klay Thompson didn't play. Kyrie Irving didn't play. I'm saying all that to say, hopefully if I get tickets this year, they're all playing. And hopefully it's cheaper, because now you don't really have the marquee players in Brooklyn outside of maybe Mikal Bridges. So, but we'll see. We'll see. And lastly, before we go, like I said last week, I brought back the unpopular topic of the day. And with the schedule release and the offseason in full effect for the NBA, that means the annual or traditional, whatever you want to say, videos of off-season workouts and off-season runs start to commence. You really start to see the Rico Hines runs, or the Pro-Ams, the Drew Leagues and the Goodman Leagues, and you start to see players playing, video releases of a bunch of star players playing in the Rico Hines runs. And I don't know if this is an unpopular topic, but this was a argument or a debate that I had with somebody yesterday. The question was, what do you think is more beneficial? These runs when you play against star players, because of course the video came out of Chet Holmgren. He was playing in a off-season workout runs with the likes of Kevin Durant and Trae Young and players like that. And I think Chet Holmgren scored like 30 points or something. The question and conversation was, what is more important and what's more valuable in the offseason? The runs, the Rico Hines runs, the games where you play pretty much pick a professional pickup pretty much, Or the individual workouts, the workouts that you see Steph Curry do a lot with his trainer and those type of shooting drills and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the value and I understand the importance of those type of workouts, the individual workouts. I understand, how important it is locking into a gym with a personal trainer or with a shooting coach or with a fitness coach or whatever. I understand the benefits of that, especially as a professional player. Now, again, I have to preface this by saying, for people that's going to be, what does he know? I'm not a professional athlete, obviously. I never played professional sports. I played college basketball. I was good enough to go overseas. Due to personal situations, I wasn't able to go, even though I did I did successfully make an overseas tryout, or I got picked up for a team. It's just due to personal reasons I wasn't able to go. So I have been, for lack of a better term, I've been in that world. The vulture and yourself to basketball or whatever sport you're playing. And I know the benefits of having a shooting coach or having a coach that is solely focused on you and has workouts set for you and has workouts and dietaries, things that allow you to be at your very best. But one thing that athletes hear a lot is practice like it's a game. Take shots. Don't take practice shots. Take game shots in practice. So that means that you want to go at game speed, because there's no point of practicing if you are not going to do that in the game. That's one thing I hate about watching some of these big men like Rudy Gobert going into a gym, or Robert Williams going into a gym and putting up threes. You're not going to do that. And that's not why the Timberwolves, that's not why the Boston Celtics have you on their team. And you're very rarely, if ever, going to be taking threes. What you need to do is get in the paint and be the defensive anchor that you are. So I said that to say this. I guess my unpopular topic of the week is, I think that these Rico Hines and these pickup games with professional athletes are more important and more beneficial to players than individual workouts. And again, I understand the importance of individual workouts, but to me, you're playing against the best of the best. You have Steph Curry going up against a Cade Cunningham, or you have, a bunch of star athletes going to these pickup runs. And it's not how it used to be. It used to be outside of, going outside and the street hoopers. You never really had the professional athletes going out to play in these runs. Now, these runs are solely built for the professional athletes. I mean, we know, last season, or maybe earlier in this offseason, you saw Paul George running with Jaime Jaquez in the UCLA Bruins team. You saw Patrick Beverly. You saw Draymond Green. Like, I just think that pickup is more beneficial to your actual game and your skill, because you're able to put everything that you're learning to the test. I think that pickup is more important and more beneficial to athletes than, or 7-on-7 for football players, than individual drills. I could be wrong. That's just my thought. And there you have it, man. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweaters, long sleeve, or joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'm so close. I'm under I'm under 100 to get to 1,000 subscribers, and it definitely means a lot. Everyone that does subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, share a video, share a short. I'm trying to get to 1,000. Anything will help. Also, please subscribe to or follow the socials. Follow the Instagram. Follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily on there, and it would mean a lot for you guys to support and engage with me. If you get a comment from me or you get a response, that's me. Just keep it respectful, and we'll have a dialogue. I understand that not everything I say people agree with, and that's completely fine. And I don't expect them to. And if you have a issue or you have if you don't agree, we'll talk about it. I have no problem debating. I have no problem talking. Just again, keep it respectful, please, because I'm always going to be respectful to you guys and your opinions. Yeah, man. And there you have it. Until next time, much love.